Welcome to a very fresh morning here at Thornybush Private Nature Reserve. My name is Mark. Becky on camera, and a misty camera it is because it's been under covers and now it's out in the cold. It's all misted up. And Andy in final control. I need to do something about that rattling on the jack. Took the jack off yesterday to jack it up. Now these tracks are not here. I don't know where he's gone. We'll have to take a couple of loops. Coming out of camp this morning, male leopard tracks heading out of camp, coming this way. Relatively fresh tracks. We'll go back down towards the river and hopefully keep the signal going. Elephants were around camp most of the night. We could hear them crashing around. Yeah, no, he's still on the road. Obviously goes off the road every now and then to mark territory. And unfortunately, if he carries on west from here, he's not going to be able to follow his tracks. But we'll go back and find his mother and brothers, or rather find where they went to. Unless he went back to the river. Doesn't look like it. Andy, just watch the signal. Just keep track of signal right now, because it's somewhere here that I might be losing it. Okay, copy. Still on the road. Get a glimpse down this road. Somewhere here that maybe we start losing decibels. So he's obviously quite far ahead of us, this leopard, because I'm looking far down as we can't see him. His tracks still head down this way in a westerly direction. Sorry, Franklin. I can see nothing. They're also fogged up. And I needed to look far down the road with my far lookers. One of the languages in South Africa is a language called Afrikaans. It's derived from Dutch. And in Afrikaans, binoculars are verkykers. Translated means far lookers. And looking as far as my far lookers allow me to into the misty lenses, I'm not seeing this leopard on the road. So, well, we're not going to see him. I don't know what time he must have come through camp, but he is long gone. So we're going to, excuse me, we shall head back towards camp and go and see if we can find the tracks of the others. maybe look for a spot to watch. Well, the sun's about rising now. Last sliver of moon, actually can't, there it is. About, I'd say maybe 2 days away from new moon. Last sliver of moon, just above the sun. It's actually a beautiful spot to see the sunrise from here. There you go. And almost over camp. In fact, those trees in the far distance, but the trees that the sun is rising over are the trees at the beginning of our camp. And this is the road from where the sun is all the way here. It's the road that this leopard walked on sometime early this morning or during the night. There are some bird tracks on top of the leopard tracks, which means that there's been a dove moving around. There's a bit of a time frame because the dove would have been moving around within the last 20 minutes or so. I didn't hear any alarm calls last night, so I couldn't really get a closer time frame as to the time this leopard came through here. My guess is it was sometime during the night. The only thing wrong with this picture is the power line. The pole. Not in shot. See, I can't frame my eyes properly. A few noises down at those pans. Maybe we could go down there on Hamilton Loop. You ready? The redness is gone. The brightness begins. I think what we'll do first is just take a loop around towards the southern area. There are also civet tracks going the other way. Maybe just touch base with a couple of other regulars from this part of the world. Maybe find a local zebra herd that's hanging around here at the moment. There's a small group of wildebeest, and then an unseasonal calf. That has subsequently been named Billy. James. Thanks for your emails. James wanting to know if it happens often having leopards through camps. I think if I put it this way, the camps are inconsequential. Leopards move around, and especially camps that are not fenced in like ours. And I mean, for me back home, similar. I don't have a fence around my house area, so yes, in them moving around when they in that particular area, but I wouldn't say often. It's about as often as a leopard moves through its territory that it might bring it near camp. They don't necessarily make a point of it, although I have lived in places where leopard have maybe left their cubs around a camp because they feel it's safer, because they go off hunting and they think that as long as people are around, they're going to leave their cubs there, and the hyenas and lion are not going to come and get their cubs. For whatever reason it may have been. Morning, Impala. It's getting a bit chilly there this morning, girls. Hair standing up. Called piloerection, when hair stands up. We get it, but we don't have much hair for it to make any difference to our bodies. But for animals, when their hair stands up, it increases the gap of air between the hairs, and so it helps with insulation. Helps keep them warm. And basically what happens to us when we get cold and our hair the body hair stands up, we call it goosebumps. Elephants were here, blocking the road. Going down to the parking area. Vicky, do you know when this part of Thornybush was added to Thornybush? Like only last couple of years or so?
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it's about a year ago. Got to that.
So that means that elephants have never been in this part. You could actually see that. Yeah, that's something that one should consider when one cuts trees. Morning, Franklin. Strip bar. So James, it's not that they make a point of coming into camp. It's just that when in traveling through their territory, if it just that particular day their route brings them through a camp, it just happens to be that way. Sometimes it can happen a couple of times a month, and sometimes it can be months before it happens again. It's like if there was a bird nest in a tree, it doesn't stop other birds from coming into it. Everything goes about their lives as though that other nest wasn't even there. It's the same. The camp in the bush might as well not even be there. It's just obstacles. Of course, when there are fences around the camp, it is a different matter. And then you don't notice the frequency at which animals come through the camp. But there's reason to believe that some animals find safety in the camps and the presence of humans, despite the fact that we, sorry, just getting the message in my ear. So there's reason to believe that some animals specifically like the camp, not only because sometimes you get cultivated gardens and lovely short grass lawns, but also because there's a population of nyala that exists now that hasn't existed before, and nyala are one of these antelope that seem to find the areas around camps perhaps the safest. What's the date of that full moon? Gee, going to be close to the solstice. Morning, Linda. Nice to hear from you. Linda's telling me about a full moon on the 23rd of this month. That's supposed to be the closest to Earth. Do I think the behavior of the animals will be any different? I'm sure they will be. I don't know how much different to any other full moon. I mean, the full moon does affect animals. It does affect every living thing that has liquid in its body, or plants. That's why you grow with the moon, planting with moon cycles and harvesting with moon cycles, because the moon affects the moon affects every living thing. Just stop there before they move off. It's just lovely light, morning light on these zebra. But how much different is going to be just in this particular full moon, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to predict that. What's interesting is that it will be very, very close to the solstice. Yeah, the elephants. I want to go back that way now. And lifting up again. another group of zebra. You'll notice here that the zebra are in relatively small groups, small family groups, stallion with a couple of mares, maybe 3 or 4 mares and some offspring. And also you'll notice as we drive around that the terrain and the density of the bush in this part of Africa in particular is such that it's not conducive to living in large groups. These have been here, pushed down that Nilotica. That's the Nyala in the background. There's a mare and her foal. And a Nyala bull just behind her. It's quite nice actually. Elephant down to our left. Can't see them, we can hear them feeding. Morning, Deborah in Florida. That must be quite nice with the Nyala in the background. Deborah was asking, do zebra browse on leaves or eat marula fruit? None of the above, I'm afraid. Zebra are predominantly grazers. They're predominantly a medium grass grazer. They're also, since they're not ruminants, they don't have the stomach of the other bovids. They don't go for quality of grazing or browsing, they go for quantity. So zebra have a wider range of grasses that they'll browse on, and they'll eat a lot of it. Kind of in a way like elephant, that they've got to eat a lot of grass, and it keeps cycling through their system. They look fat all the time because their digestive system is a process. Speaking of digestive systems, there's the zebra digestive system at work. Requires a fair amount of fermentation, bacteria in the gut that helps break down the cellulose of the plant, and that causes a lot of gas, gas buildup, and that's why got this mare, closest one to us, a very prominent shadow stripes along the rump. This is the one characteristic of the southern zebra. This is the plain zebra, but the southern subspecies. And in between the black stripes on the rump, especially if you look at the foal, you can see a very, very faint brownish stripe. And in some zebra, it's almost reddish between the stronger, darker, or black markings. Here come their oxpeckers for the day. And she's got quite prominent shadow stripes. They're almost as dark as her main stripes. Oxpecker irritating that poor child. Now the zebra further north, going into East Africa, don't have the shadow stripe. They just have the black and white stripes. So when you're watching documentaries, perhaps, you'll be able to tell whether the zebra that you see are in southern Africa, in other words, Botswana, South Africa, Namibia. We're only talking about the plain zebra now. I'm not talking about Hartmann zebra or the mountain zebra, because we do get 2 other species of zebra here. And then, of course, you up in the north, you get the Grevy's zebra up in Kenya, which is a beautiful zebra. Only talking about the plain zebra, like the ones you'll see in Serengeti or elsewhere in Tanzania. But having said that, I took notice of almost every zebra I used to watch when I'm been in East Africa, and I have seen the odd zebra up there that displays the shadow stripe. So it must be a recessive gene up there for some reason and a dominant gene down here. And I still haven't managed to work out the whys and wherefores of that particular conundrum. Now, despite the bloated look of zebra traditional, generally, she's looking very preggy. She's looking quite heavy. Repeat that. Who that was from, please? Jill Robinson. Hello, Jill. There's a new name. Wanting to know, having mentioned grevies, still wanting to know if we get grevies here. No, Jill, only up in northern Kenya, northeastern Kenya. I don't think you'll find grevies even. Probably about a year and a half or so. Oxpecker in the ear again. And it looks like it might have a little bit of neck on the top of its ear. No, just the markings. Oh, that was a big tree that just went. That must be right on the fence line. We're not going to be able to see these elephants this morning because they're very deep in an acacia forest. Lovely morning sound. Let me show you quickly in the book while we're watching zebra. Equus grevii. And I'm using here Jonathan Kingdon's. No, wait, Andy. Thanks, Andy. Just quickly, have a look at some of the zebra. I wanted to show you the differences between them all. This is the grevy's zebra, very, very close stripes, much smaller zebra, but beautiful big ears. Quite characteristic of the grevy's are the big ears. This is what we call the Cape Mountain zebra, or Hartman's Mountain zebra. And you'll notice that they have a very white belly, also relatively close stripes. I'm sure they might even be related somehow to the grevy's. But of course they all belong to the genus Equus. But the stripes stop down on the belly, as opposed to most of these other zebras, their stripes go around the belly. And then here we have a picture of a lot of the different subspecies of Equus quagga, which is the common zebra, or the plain zebra. And starting with, this is more or less your East African type of savanna or plain zebra without the shadow stripes on the rump, coming down to this is more or less, yeah, that's more or less our South African species. Quaka quaka. Let's see, this is, I don't agree with Jonathan Kingdom, but anyway, there you can see the shadow stripes. That is it. The Chelly is, I don't quite agree with him. He's saying it's far too white at the bottom. Anyway, there's so much speculation. It's like giraffe, you know. The question whether they're separate species or different subspecies or just different markings of the same subspecies. Lots of speculation about these things. Marsha in Louisville, Kentucky. Morning, Marsha. Wanting to know if zebra get colic that can be quite fatal in domestic horses. Being an equine, I would imagine they do, Marsha. I haven't been able to, I really couldn't tell you. I really don't know. There's that stick hanging down in your way. Bruno's barking. Red bull oxpeckers. Okay, well, let's see if we can find these wildebeests. And Billy the wildebeest. You ready? Goodbye, mother and child. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Okay. So, Marsha, unfortunately, when it comes to I would imagine maybe so. I'm not too clued up on all the different diseases that animals get in the wild, since I don't deal with that very much, if at all. But I'd have to find it out. I have not here, but at home I have a book on wildlife management and or the capture and the care of wildlife, and I'm sure that book would have some indication. Let's go and have a look at this little water hole down here. Hopefully the signal is going to be strong enough. Elephants were here last night, leaving some of these round leaf teak branches, breaking trees, I think. Nobody else. Yeah, I'll back now. He's down at this water hole. The southernmost tip of almost southeastern corner of the whole of Thornybush. And from here it's probably all the way. I want to one moment, excuse me a moment. Oh. Maryland. California. California. I'd like to know where in California, please. I'd like to know if zebra, or why aren't zebra ridden like horses? Well, partly because they don't have the lumbar strength. The spine is not strong enough. Gee, these elephants came all the way right to the gate last night, investigating this. And also, I suppose, there have been people that have tried to span them, to pull the carriage, but zebra, I suppose, they just don't have it in them. They, short of a few hundred years of domestication, they have a mind of it. And they're closer related to asses and donkeys than true horses. And I guess they can be more stubborn than a donkey. And they're easily tamed. I've known of a number of zebra that have been raised in captivity that become quite fleet. They have the ability. Quite small, very big. They wouldn't be able to carry a. I think they'd be able to carry the weight well. Wow. It's like a midden here. Well, I guess I've got no choice but to drive over a little bit of it. Fortunately, it's not summer. Just a lot of elephant dung here. Normally don't like driving over elephant dung because of the insects, the beetles, dung beetles. Love the smell of elephant dung on a winter morning. And I'm not being facetious, I'm being dead serious. It is just such a lovely. Love elephants. Morning, Lorraine. On the Gold Coast. What was that noise? Did you hear something? No. Why is that? Quite get. Lorraine's on the Gold Coast of Australia. I wonder. I've got a cousin in Byron Bay. I'm sure that's somewhere near you, Lorraine. These boys in a spa. Give me the ram at the back challenging the other ram. And the other ram is chickening out. The rutting season should be over, so they shouldn't really be sparring. But there's clearly some dominance going on there. One ram intimidating the other. Off they go. Anyways, Lorraine was asking whether we have had, or whether the elephants came into camp last night. They skirted camp, Lorraine. They didn't hear their tracks are here coming from camp to here. They're at the moment only about a couple of 100 yards away from camp. When I can hear them crashing, feeding, but not right in camp. Not like they did a few nights ago. They skirted camp. I heard them when I was lying in bed. I heard them breaking branches. from camp. We're not too far from camp right now, in fact. And they came from camp up this road. I'll show you, because we're going to drive past the entrance to camp shortly. Morning, Jan. Wanting to know if the zebra is about to give birth, will she stay close to the herd? Oh, the elephant will be busy. Now, that's a good question. A number of animals leave the herd to go and give birth because it's vital that there's a period of bonding between mother and child. It's important for that to happen. So yes, sometimes, a lot of the time they do not necessarily leave the herd, but they are somewhat separate from the herd. Much like this mare is this morning. We saw the 3 other members of the herd probably at least 100 or so yards away from her. But yes, that maternal bonding is very important. Because, especially in zebra, another mare is not going to look after another mare's child. There's no allo suckling, there's no allo care. There is, if anything, animosity towards youngsters that are moving about and not without their mother. I've known stallions to kill foals that are wandering around without their mother because they didn't have that bonding moment and knowing who their mother is. And what happens is, if you don't have this mother-child bond, the child doesn't know who his mother is, and then it follows anything that moves. So I've had wildebeest, baby wildebeest, even following, and zebra for that matter, following a vehicle because something happened to the herd just after birth, and the mother couldn't bond with its child. And a stallion can't afford to have a foal whinnying and complaining because it can't find its mother. It will attract attention to the rest of the herd. Stallions are known to kill a child. Also, they're known to kill the children of other stallions. It can be quite harsh. I mean, it's lovely and peaceful out here in the bush, and it's a wonderful harmony that everything lives in some sense, but it can be harsh. So we've done a really big loop. This is the road we were on. We're joining up with the road that we were on earlier, following the leopard, coming out of camp. These are the trees ahead of us, or the trees we saw the sun rising behind. And these are the leopard tracks. The elephant tracks have come directly in front of us now in the shade. Is the entrance to our camp. There's some impala standing at the entrance to our camp. This is where the elephant were, and this is where the leopard was as well. So, not too far. The elephant went too far away from camp. Just out here on the outskirts. Morning, impala. They're all going to cross the road, I think so. There we go. Oh, something just startled them. I think they can smell this leopard because this leopard walked here. They're now alarming for some reason. Hang on, Andy. Hang on a sec. Oh. I know this leopard is long gone, but these alarm calls, There's definitely the scent of this leopard because he came straight out of camp, which is almost directly in front of us, this little junction ahead of us, and he's walked west. These impala are standing right on the spot where he was standing, or where he was walking. It's possible that he had spray marked his territory and his scent is in the air. It could also be that these impala are associating the vehicle with the leopard. I don't know how often it has happened that there have been leopards with game vehicles hunting these impala, and whether they're starting to associate the two. The herd is now split up. Some of them ran across the road. The ram, being the biggest wimp of the whole herd, was the first to alarm, and he's alarming quite intensely, caused the others to break into alarm calls. And I don't know, it could possibly be just that the scent of leopard is around here, and our presence has somehow spooked them a little bit. Because this leopard was here quite some time ago already. The rest of the herd are now coming in. Come on, all of you. Come and join the rest of them. Come on. Across the road. Here they go. Let me just switch off. Because they're all standing in the sun now. I want to go and have a look at them. It's going to be quite nice watching them come across the road, because they need to join up together. False alarm, everyone. Unless there is still a cat in camp. But I'm sure you must have heard very, very intense and frantic alarm calls, the snort that they're all giving off. And normally what happens is the first animal to give the alarm call is the animal that's least likely to be caught, because the predator is going to ignore that animal because it's going to be the most alert of the whole herd. And if the element of surprise is gone, there's no point in even wasting the energy on a hunt. But none of them are looking in any particular direction, so I think that they're just going berserk like this just for look at that. You see they're reacting a little bit to the vehicle. Nice light on them. I want to go the other way anyway. So no, it's going the other way. Ordinarily, I'd say that kind of intense alarming is because they definitely have seen a predator, but the herd is still split up. Some of them are still on the left-hand side of the road, and I've got a strong suspicion that it was all about us just arriving at a time when they were already nervous. And something just spooked them. Quite a pale, you see that pale one? An impala there that's rather pale, just in colour. And they're all starting to relax now. Tails are flicking, they're starting to go back to their grazing. fast. Actually, I think they're realizing that they were alarming for nothing. Morning, Alan. Not sure which Alan, or where Alan is. Alan wanted me to show you a dung beetle, and I can't do that, Alan. Not at this time of the year. One of the reasons why I was okay to. I had that several elephant that it's. Speaking of elephant, here are elephant tracks going right through camp. So there were elephants almost in camp. Oxpeckers making a bit of a noise. Yeah, here's fresh elephant dung and urine and branches. They were in camp, but not right at the swimming pool like they were the other night. Within a few feet. But Alan, unfortunately, this time of the year there are no dung beetles. I might be able to find a dead one because they died off. They've left their larvae or their eggs in the dung and all going to hatch out summer, spring after our first rain. But in the dry season, the dung beetles don't move around. We don't have any. So unfortunately, I can't fulfill the request right now. But maybe if I'm lucky, I'll be able to find one that has passed on. Scarab. Oh, it's chilly. When is the sun gonna warm? Yes, within an hour it'll be warm. We're getting down to the river, so it's gonna be a little bit more chilly. Are you okay?
Yeah.
British blood keeping you warm. I'm wrapped up in layers. I've got never mind. Becky's quite happy with this temperature. For me, this is about as cold as it can get before I curl up in a ball. So, has our other leopard moved around in this part of the world? No. Hello, Amanda in Ohio. The inevitable question about living with wildlife. Have I ever been attacked by an animal, come close to being attacked by? Yes, I guess you could say so. It's Ohio. That I've come close to being attacked by an animal. I have been attacked by an animal. Beaten up badly, broken, gored. Had an elephant tusk right through me. Saving a young couple from London. I'm being a wimp now. I'm putting gloves on. Keep my hands warm, then maybe my body can stay a bit warmer. For me, it's my feet and my neck. Feet first, and then my neck, and then my hands. If I can keep those three warm, then I'm not too bad. I don't know how I would survive. I would not be able to survive in your northern hemisphere winter climate. I've visited it. I visited Europe and North America in winter. So I know from experience that it was a wonderful novelty to play in snow and do some ice climbing and try my hand at skiing. And been there, done it, seen it. If it ever happens again, it'll be summer. Although I did experience summer in the good old US of A, in California and Baja, Mexico and Oregon, and then a little bit of the sounds of cicadas in summer in New York City. Central Park. Okay, let's have a look at this little Albedo pan quickly, and then we're going to come back. Our leopards haven't come back this way. The leopard tracks that I had here yesterday morning, well, we saw the male, the one larger male, saw his tracks on the other side of the river. The last tracks I had of Mom and the other cubs were sort of heading in here somewhere, and I seem to think that they must have had a kill in here because somewhere around here, because the baboons didn't come back to sleep on their trees in this part of the world last night, and their tracks don't emerge from this area. It's a little bit big, and I can't go driving around in there hoping to find them. I don't know where they are. Kashmir in India, that's a nice place to have viewers from, and it's been a while since I've heard from someone in India. Morning, Kashmir. Wanting to know, gosh, it's a complicated question, if I can remember it all. Well, to answer the one part of the question about elephants. Elephants don't have a territory like the other animals. Elephants move wherever they want to. Well, for this particular reserve, it's about 15,000 hectares. They covered pretty much the whole reserve, although there tends to be one herd that likes the southern part of the reserve, and there's another herd of elephant up in the north. The lion and leopard, on the other hand, they have very specific territories, and they will stay in that territory throughout their lives. And I'm not sure, I think it must be very similar to tigers and leopards up in India. There are not many lions left in India. The Asiatic lion is, I think, only a couple of places where they still occur. But very much like your cats, your big cats up in India, they have very specific territories. They don't really move from those territories throughout their lives. A leopard's territory a lot smaller than that of a lion, so you're going to find a lot of leopard within the territory of a lion. But they don't move all around the reserve. Kelly, morning. Pennsylvania. Interesting. Morning, Kelly. Wanting to know if we've ever had to put down an animal. And what are the rules regarding interference? Generally speaking, nature takes its course. It's vital that nature takes its course. There are not individuals, but there are circumstances that, let me try and rephrase this. Vultures. Might well be that the leopards had a kill here somewhere. There's certain things that are dependent on sick and lame and injured animals. So when something happens and it's a natural occurrence, one has to let nature take its course. And the only time one really does interfere is when it is a human-induced injury or problem. And in many cases, I've had many cases in my history where we've had to dart an animal and treat it because it's been caught in a snare or it's had an injury that has been caused by humans. And that alters the course of things. I have to be honest, I've never had to personally put down an animal. I had one incident once in a small reserve I was managing once upon a time in my younger years. I used to have poachers that would come in with a helicopter and shoot animals for meat. And it was very, very rocky and mountainous terrain. And I had a blessed buck, it's a type of antelope. And I found one of them that had 3 broken legs, and I had to bring someone in to put it down, but I couldn't do it myself. As much as I felt this animal's pain, I needed somebody else to do it. It's very hard for me to do something like that. There have been 1 or 2 occasions that I've had in my past where I've had to consider putting something down or interfering, and in the debating and having the discussions with the relevant parties involved, in the interim it has been that particular individual was eaten by lions, so it took the onus off of me to make that decision. There was a time once when we had can you get that vulture up there? It's not really great view. It's got its head tucked in. I'm going to start moving again. I want to look around a little bit, see what we can see. Go up this road, turn around and come back. Have a look in these trees and see something. Vultures tend not to really hang around leopard kills because leopard kills are in trees and a vulture can't really feed in a tree. The vulture needs things on the ground. Vultures can't grip very well with their talons, but there are a couple of them up there. There was an incident once where we had 4 big old buffalo bulls, what we call Duggar boys. This was when I was in my 20s still, in a southern Sabi Sand Game Reserve, place that's now called Lion Sands. Sadly, just recently lost the owner in a helicopter crash. But we had an incident where 3 bulls out of this, we'd been watching this group of 4 Duggar boys. They'd been hanging around the same mud wallows for a while, and they'd seemed to be getting on quite fine. But then one morning, I wasn't at the sighting, but one morning, 3 of them, for some unknown reason, turned on the 4th male and gored him and beat him up pretty badly. I guess he said something wrong. We lost at poker. Jokes aside, they had injured him really badly, and we were all back at the lodge having breakfast with our guests and discussing what we were going to do about it, and we made the decision that we should go back and put the old man out of his misery. And when we got back there, he had already died, so we didn't have to do anything. And then the lion came. Wonderful bird life in this big anna tree. Can't really see them most of it. You can see in a palace. White-backed vultures. There is something around here. Results of those leopards. What I'll do is I'll see if I can get one of the guys on the radio and ask them to come down and have a look. There are yellow-vented or common bulbuls. Near a grey-headed bush shrike, crombeck, chin-spot bacchus. Mouse birds, a host of birds in this little corner of the world. Morning guys, any station copy? Without the repeater, no one's gonna hear me from down here. Where's the one getting around? I would imagine that in a reserve like Thornybush, perhaps, where they have bought a lot of these animals to restock the reserve, animals here might be seen in a different light, and maybe there'll be times here when they might interfere in a different level to a place where I live, which is part of Kruger. It's part of a greater ecosystem that nature needs to take its course. I guess it's a question I can ask the next time I meet up with John. Also-breasted bush shrike. Faint smell of something here. There's something happened. go north a little bit. See what we can find up in the north. Well, north, more north from here, not all the way up north. One day we'll be able to get there. Gosh. Give me the name again. Judy. Sorry. I have this condition called forgetfulness. Where anyway. Hello, Judy. In Seattle. Up in Washington. Never got to see Seattle. Fortunately, didn't even get to Washington. But Judy was asking, does the young zebra foal imprint on the stripes of the mother, the stripe pattern of the mother? Yes, to a large extent it does. Quite right, Judy. As well as the scent and the sound of its mother. But very much so. The stripe pattern is distinct for each and every zebra, unique to each zebra. And I guess you got to be a zebra to see it so distinctly, to see it so clearly. Interesting question. We're going back to India now. Morning, Kabir. So you're probably a couple of hours ahead of us. Good morning to you. Glad to have you with us. And Kabir would like to talk more about differences between Asian and African elephants, as well as will an Asian elephant be able to survive here and vice versa? Well, apart from size, one of the other fundamental differences is that if you look at the overall shape of the Asian elephant, it has somewhat of a concave back, as opposed to the African elephant, which is rather the other way around. The Asian is convex, the African elephant's got a sunken, concave back, spinal column. The other obvious difference is, of course, the size of the ears. And funnily enough, if you look at the shape of the ears, the shape of the Asian elephant almost looks like India, and the shape of the African elephant almost looks like Africa. I mean, the ear of the elephant. Then there's the little fingertips at the end of the trunk. The African elephant has two little protuberances in the tip of its trunk that it uses for feeding and picking up very small things, and there are two little fingers. And with the Asian elephant there is only one. The Asian elephant, the females don't have tusks, whereas the African elephant females do have tusks. I think their social structure is very similar. There's a lot of other similarities rather than differences. Even though they are a different genus and a different species, they're not really that closely related. As far as surviving is concerned, I guess I can't be sure. The vegetation is somewhat similar. India, of course, was part of Africa, so there are species of plants in India that are or have common ancestry with African species of plants. So I guess to some degree, yes, they would be able to. They'd be able to find adequate food. It's not an easy question to answer. Wild Asian elephants have to deal with tigers and leopards. Not that leopards hunt them or that tigers do. There are only a few places in Africa where lions hunt elephants. It would be an interesting thing. And I know of a couple of sanctuaries. In fact, there's a famous sanctuary. There's a famous sanctuary in Tennessee that has both Asian and African elephants. And there have been cases where Asian and African elephants have been kept together and have resulted in crossbreeding, but the calves have never survived because I guess it's too much of a crossbred individual. Road with no tire tracks, only animal tracks. Be the first to. If Alan's still watching, there might be a possibility. I'm just looking at some elephant dung up ahead, and there's clearly something that's been burrowing underneath it. The only thing that would do that would be a scarab. There might still be the odd scarab flying around. The other night we did have a small rhinoceros beetle fly too. Oh, that Thornybush gets me every time. Antenna because the vehicle leans over when I go underneath. Yeah, I don't know what made Apple make these things round the way this is. That's quite amazing. What makes it that? Oh, they are modified apples. So somebody finally wrote in and said, "You're round like these ones that I've got." These round things don't stay in your ear. Oh, we're just discussing the merits of earphone, earpods, in ear, out ear, whatever. And Becky's got a ergonomically designed pair. Okay, on with her. Morning, Marcus. Should I say Guten Morgen? I'm trying to think. I wonder if this is Marcus that I know in Germany. This was out here a couple of years ago. Excuse me. Marcus! Asking about acacias and giraffes. I wanting to know if acacias give off toxins when giraffes eat on the leaves, because he noticed that giraffes spend more time on giraffes spend more time on acacia leaves. They do, Marcus, not really toxins. They produce tannins. All plants have tannin levels of varying degrees, and the plants that have the lowest tannin levels are the plants that have the highest palatability, and those are the plants that are mostly eaten by animals. Some of the plants, for example, this silver cluster leaf, or I'll actually show you one on the other side of the car, because that's where the light is better. But the silver cluster leaf, for example, this terminalia and the guari, yeah, this whole bunch of trees we got up ahead of us, none of them have thorns. They all have some degree of bitterness to their leaves or texture to their leaves that prevents them from being eaten. The silver cluster leaf has these fine silvery hairs. Some of them are velvety, some of them are leathery. Some leaves on some trees, like maybe the guari, are waxy and tough. And obviously those are the trees that have very high tannin levels to begin with, and so their leaves are not very, very tasty and not very palatable. But the trees that are the most palatable and the most fed on, like this tree coming up shortly now, which is going to be right in front of the camera, is an acacia. If I can get under this. But here, this acacia next to me now, and the sickle bush sticking into it, which is just next to it, are the most highly browsed species of trees, and that's why they have thorns and spines. Because a long time ago, as mammals diversified and more animals browsed on these plants. Excuse me a moment. The lioness walked here. It's been a long time since we've had lion traffic. With the diversity of mammals browsing on all these trees, obviously there was a need for the trees to defend themselves. Trees are living things. They're not inanimate. They might very well be still. They don't move much. Well, they do move a little bit, but the physical defense of thorns and spines came about because of the amount of animals browsing on them, and the more animals browsed on them, the more it was necessary for these trees to prevent animals from overutilizing them. But what has happened over time, because nature is all about adaptation to change, and these changes in the physiology of trees required a change in the physiology of the animals and the means by which they managed to get their food. A lot of kudu up ahead, so this lioness wasn't too recent. Wasn't too fresh. and less thick. And in the process, chasing the kudu. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Becky. Guys, we've got this lovely big forked stick that the camera person has to push branches over the antenna. Big kudu bull. And there was Becky stretching to push this branch, and I was dallying. Yeah, I'm going to stop here. Some of the kudu have gone over to the side of the road, and oh, see, there's a zebra there too. Very thick bush. There's still a kudu and her calf just up ahead of me. I want her to come across, and I want to chase her deeper in this way. They're also probably nervous because they can smell a cat, because the lioness must have walked here sometime last night. But if you don't come soon, girl, I'm going to drive off anyway, because I want to go look at these tracks. There comes another kudu. Okay, so instead of going that side of the road, those kudu are coming this side. Big old kudu cow. 3 calves. And their mom's going after them. There's a good mom. So, what were we talking about when I broke the antenna? Trees and acacias, and Marcus's question about toxins. So the animals had to adapt to these slowly changing features of trees. In other words, the emergence of thorns and spines, and so their lips and their tongues and the parts of their mouth that they used to feed on trees had to strengthen to accommodate the thorns. Buffalo, lion and elephant tracks in one spot. And that physical adaptation of plants of animals to the thorns and spines. Sorry, I'm trying to talk and my brain's trying to think about what it's seeing at the same time. Required plants to take this one step further, and that is that plants use a chemical defense now rather than the physical defense, because, well, the animal can just browse on the leaves and ignore the thorns and spines. So when an animal is browsing now, what happens is the roots of a tree start producing tannins, bitter tannins that are pushed into the leaves. And these tannins make the leaves very, very bitter. And yes, after some time they do become toxic, because after all, what is tannin used for? It's for leather. It's used for waterproofing. And so very, very high tannin content in the stomach is no good to an animal, because it will prevent the animal's body from absorbing nutrients from what it is feeding on, and therefore not be able to survive very well. And if anything, at times what can happen is an animal can die with a full stomach. And so these tannins that are produced have rather a rapid infusion of tannins into the leaves. I think studies were done something like 400% within 20-30 minutes or so. And that can be toxic. Of course, we also drink tea, tannins in tea. Lion going the other way now. Lion up and down. Why can't these cats learn to walk in one direction? Do they have to go up and down? That confuse the daylight out of us. Elephant, giraffe, lion coming back. I cannot find this lion. Mate. last junction. What's interesting is that when trees are being fed on, and it does stimulate their tannin production, the roots start producing tannins and putting tannins into the leaves. An interesting thing occurs. A byproduct of tannins being to the leaves, the gas that is given off by leaves dipped in. That wind sorry, I can't remember what I was saying now. Yes. So in the trees producing the tannins, it's the gas is breathed in and blown downwind, and the trees that breathe it in, the trees that inhale it downwind, then start producing tannins before an animal even gets to them. So it's kind of a defense mechanism. It's also kind of a way in which trees communicate with each other on a sort of a superficial level. I hope that answers your question, as long as, it's taken a bit long, but Marcus, I hope that kind of gets your question. It doesn't look like any of the cats came down here. And I managed to get that it was from James and about African wildcats, but it's breaking up quite badly. Which other cats? Hi James. James querying the caracal, African wildcat and the African civet, wanting to know if they occur here. Yes, they do, all three of them. But I do have to mention, James, that a civet is not a cat, although it's called civet cat. It is a viverrid. The viverrids are somewhat, viverrids are mongoose, civets, genets, that side of things, as opposed to the mustelids, which are the weasel family. But, and I suppose you could say the viverrids, the Viverridae, are remotely associated with the cats, or connected to the feline. But yes, caracal would occur here, as with most other species. I see a lot of civet tracks. Civets are probably more common than, or seen more often than caracal and African wildcat. Caracal, I have to be honest with you, hardly see caracal. Even though I know I've got a caracal that lives around my house, I never see it. Very shy. I think cats are just can be just so evasive, elusive. Secretive. Civet scavenge, so they come around. I have civet up over the years. I remember about 20 years ago, we used to have this huge civet. We'd be sitting around the fire in the evenings, and it would come right up to us. Probably habituated from other people nearby that had maybe been feeding it. Caracal, of course, is what's also known as the lynx, African lynx. Very different to perhaps the lynx of Asia, Europe and Asia. Beautiful cats. Love cats. wandering around this road. The truck might have gone up there. Yeah. Up that way. To my knowledge, these cats were in the west, so I'm thinking maybe came this way and went back west. Let's drive a little bit further up this road, see if we can see some more tracks that can give me some indication of which way it walks first. Whether it came from the east, went west and back east, or whether it came from the west, walked east and went back west. That doesn't sound too confusing. Interesting question from, is it Trixie? And I'm not sure, can't remember where that is. Do you remember where Trixie's from? Kathy. Oh, the radio's crackling and I'm not listening too well, or hearing too well. Kathy. Sorry, Kathy. Kathy asking a question about women in general in Africa and the menstrual cycle, and whether it's dangerous for women to be around certain animals during their menstrual cycle in Africa as it is perhaps in North America. I think it's with bears in North America. I don't know. But as far as I know, here in Africa not. I don't know of anything offhand. Not that I know of, Kathy. Becky, do you know any? No, Becky hasn't experienced anything. The woman in my life, I've never had to worry about anything. I've never heard of any incident specifically relating to African predators or wildlife in Africa and women going through their cycles. Interesting. Yeah, kitty. Looks like there's one that went this way. And at one point it turned around and went both ways, up and down. Still walking on this road. Needs some activity both ways. My guess is that it was this way. This is going to be a dodgy signal. And this signal went there. Looks like it was still going straight. Maybe Langwan Dam, we might be lucky for a change. Cat's going that way mostly. Let me just see if I can come on high ground, see if I can get anyone on the radio. Morning, any stations copy? Yeah, morning, just trying to find out if anyone can read me. Who's that? How's it, John Mark here? Anything been picked up on this channel this morning? Okay, copied. Do you know if anybody's been following on Kunzel for the rest of them? Okay, because I've just come up near Leti, had their tracks going east and west. Looks like they came this way and they've headed back down towards Ilkley Loop now. Okay, copied. Because if they go any further north, I'm not going to be able to land with the Sinkonza anymore. Okay, so interesting. Let's watch this channel for a while. The main repeater is down. With an area the size of Thornybush, in order for these radios to cover all of this ground, we ripped a repeater station on the mountain at Maripskop, which is where we also got mixed and where we're hoping to put equipment. And what that repeater does is it sends the signal from my radio to there and then back here so that it can reach everybody. And that repeater's been done. Radio has been quiet. And they're using alternative channels that don't have a repeater, but it still requires to be relatively close to the other radio. So, one line with the two new cubs been found. This is the rest of the pride that we're looking at. They must have come from Boulder Dam way, heading east, and then they've gone back towards probably where that other female is. At our signal range, unfortunately, but if we're lucky, we can find them before they get back there. If we're lucky. Inshallah. Probably the closest we've come to Lion in a while is being on fresh tracks. And the way things go is that we might spend a day or two with fresh tracks, and then eventually we might be lucky enough to see them if they start moving around. They have been concentrating just north of our signal area for a while now, and that's why we haven't been seeing them much, or signs of them at least, because they've been out of signal range, out of the reserve. But it's only a matter of time before they come back down towards the river and we get to see them more often. One of the main reasons we've got two very small cubs, and the rest of the pride is hanging around the area where they've been keeping these cubs. venturing off to go and kill and eat and then coming back. And the last time I went to kill with a wildebeest, and it was twofold. I lose signal. But unfortunately, it looks like they might, instead of doing the loop I've just done, kind of cut through the bush and gone straight towards Langwan Dam. So I think that's our main goal right now, to see if we can find, first of all, any tracks through, but also to see if they went to the dam. If possible. Finally back. Oh, finally stalling. Picked up tracks around Waxville Pad, still further west. They might have already passed through the dam area, in the area of the dam. Not swearing, the dam. Oh, there's an African hoopoe on the ground. I don't know if we're going to get it. If it doesn't fly away, we'll get it. It's a nice bird. A lot of people like to see them. There's actually a pair of them here. Almost identical to the European hoopoe. Let us get a little bit closer. Just a little bit. Okay, for now, that's about as close as I want to get before they fly away. And then I can try and get a bit closer after this when they relax. One continues to feed, the other one's watching us out of the corner of its eye. I'm going to try and move a bit closer now. And then I want to go to that Langwan Dam because there were some birds calling down there. I knew that would happen. That's what happens. You stop and then you start up and chase them away. How big was that in the screen? This is not a road, I don't think. Starts off as the road. Same from the other side. I remember doing this when I first started here. The other side, it starts off as a road and then it peters out into nothing, and the same as this side. Possibly because there was a sighting here. Linda in the US of A, somewhere, was asking my thoughts on why some reserves are fenced and some not. Linda, not an easy question to answer because it's asking me to get into the minds of landowners and their reasons why they want to or don't want to be part of a greater conglomerate. For some of the landowners that are, excuse me a second, some of the landowners that I know of, and also it depends on so many different things. This is not an easy question to answer because there's so many variants here. Porcupine dung. In most cases, reserves are fenced because they have to keep the animals in from farming and agriculture and human settlements on the outside. So it's not even a question of whether they can be open or not. There's a legal requirement in having a game reserve for that game reserve to be fenced, unless it is. Why are those impalas doing that? Not even looking at us; they're looking down there. Sorry, they're just way down in this thick bush. There's two young impala rams. They're not even concerned with us, they're looking down the bottom. It's more or less where I heard these birds before. The only time it is an option for people to not have a fenced-in reserve is when the reserve borders on other reserves and the owners can come to an agreement to drop their fences, or, as in the case of the Kruger National Park, and the likes of the private reserves on the edge of Kruger, like Thornybush, Kasiri, Umbabat, Sabi Sands, and the likes of those private reserves, where there was an option to open up the fences, it required going into talks with the National Park Board and establishing a protocol, establishing a way to do this where everybody benefited. And it was necessary, and in the cases of the Thornybush, Kasiri, Umbabat, Sabi Sands, Olifant, all of these private reserves on the western edge of Kruger, it was important or necessary for them to become what is known as contractual parks to the national park. In other words, you still had full use of your land, but when it came to the ecology and certain aspects of management of wildlife, the national parks needed to have a say in what would happen, because we're now being incorporated into Kruger. And for some of the landowners that are on the edge of Kruger or on the edge of these private reserves, they don't want to be part of the contractual park because the Kruger Park would then dictate to them how they could use their land. And some of these landowners still want to do certain things with their land that they wouldn't be allowed to do if they opened up their fences. And some of that would be where they can put their camps, where they can put their dams and water holes, when they can have them full, what size their lodges need to be, what kind of activities they engage in on their own private properties. And for some of the landowners that I know personally, they just are not happy with that arrangement. They still want to engage in their certain behavior, certain activities that would not be allowed within, if they fell within the park. Thornybush, I couldn't tell you what the reasoning is for the landowners here at Thornybush. What I can tell you is that Thornybush has been a private reserve for a very long time. They have spent a lot of money on the animals that they have stocked in the reserve, and it is possible that they don't want to lose those individual animals, or they don't want, I don't know. I can't answer for them. I simply can't answer for them, and I can't answer for any other landowner that I haven't ever spoken to. So it is a bit of a difficult question, but what I will say is that there are a lot of private reserves that are self-contained reserves that there is nowhere for them to open their boundaries. They border on farming, agriculture, suburbia even, not suburbia, but urban areas or settlements and villages, and it's a legal requirement to maintain a boundary that prevents animals from getting in or out. That's that same colony of banded mongoose that might well be mine, actually. I don't know where it is. And he's saying he's hearing a cell phone, and I'm thinking that I might have forgotten to switch mine on. Yeah, it was mine. Sorry, everybody. I've had to keep these things on us for emergency purposes if radios go dead. That was a colony of banded mongoose that were on the other side of this damn wall. A lot of buffalo here. Franklin's are chirping. Not seeing any sign of the lion being here. I don't know where this crocodile is. Might still be warm in the water for her. This crocodile is it's a female, I believe. And that is because she was put here. She was translocated from somewhere else, and she was actually put here, and she stayed. Can I move forward, Becky? And because she was captive for a brief period during the translocation, they obviously did some examinations and established that it was a female. No cats down below the wall. Franklin complaining, but hello hornbills, digging through buffalo down. And have a look on the Langwan Road. When it warms up quickly, very quickly. personally, and this is just my personal view, so I've got to take this just as it is, my personal view. I would open up every possible area to a much greater area. For me, it just makes sense. For me, just personally, I couldn't imagine why anybody would want to stay, especially next to the Kruger National Park, why anybody would want to keep their fences. But I'm me. That's just me. As a kid, I used to dream of the fences coming down, and when they did, I couldn't believe it. This Franklin in here is complaining about something, but maybe it's a character. Can't see it. It's deep in the book. Pardon? That's why the dark-charting goshawk just flew away. That's why the Franklin was making so much noise. I thought it might have been a cat. Oh, and another one. Maybe they made a kill. Pair of dark-charting goshawks. I didn't notice if they had a full crop though. And I'm not finding any lion tracks either. Got a bit excited when I heard that Franklin complaining. Definitely the sound of a predator, or alarming at a predator. And west of Thornybush is another very big private game reserve that is fully fenced, and they've just been buying up land left, right and centre and increasing the size of their land. And very good friends of mine, a little lodge known as Kamkula Bush Lodge, are kind of squeezed between Thornybush and this other big reserve called Kapama. In fact, part of Kamkula's property, known as Jabulani, is actually in Thornybush. But there's this main road that runs right through the property. And so it would be a logistical nightmare to drop the fences. This is another thing, is that in some of these reserves, like the reserve that I spend some time on every few months or so, I go up there for a little while. A weekend here and a weekend there. Work. A place called Salati Game Reserve, bordered on all three sides. It's in this giant triangle, and all three sides are main roads, main arteries that are carrying big trucks carrying ore from one of the biggest mines. On one side there's a road that carries a very, very high volume of huge trucks that carries ore from Palabora down into, I suppose they go down to Mozambique, to Maputo. On another road, it's not that well utilized by commercial vehicles, but certainly by public vehicles. It's a road between two towns. And it's one of those instances where it's physically impossible to take down those fences, to incorporate Salati and any other reserve. So Salati becomes this private game reserve, 35,000 hectares, that is never going to be able to be incorporated into, never going to drop its fences, because it can't. You can't have the general public driving through a game reserve on a main artery between two cities and towns. Especially with the level of poaching that we have in this country at the moment. I had the name in my head, now I lost it. Who's that from, Andy? Joanne in Massachusetts. Oh, Joanne. Joanne. Question about buffalo. Asking whether buffalo have ever been farmed, the African buffalo, as a domestic animal. Yes, very much so. In fact, it's a very big business at the moment, but not for food, Joanne. Purely for breeding purposes. You see, population of buffalo in this part of the world, here and in Kruger, these buffalo are all carriers of a couple of diseases. Diseases, some of which affect them, some of which don't. Some they're merely carriers, and some they are not only carriers, but they are debilitated by it to some degree, and they can pass it on to other animals. I mean, one of the most important, of course, which would destroy the beef industry, is foot and mouth disease. And all of these animals carry foot and mouth, so they can't be translocated anywhere, they can't go anywhere, they can't be used as much. But they also carry bovine tuberculosis. And so what has become very big business, especially since there is a trend these days to create wildlife areas out of old farming areas and to stock these areas with animals that once occurred there, where these animals were eliminated to make way for farming and agriculture. And it's cases like this that when people want to restock, they want to put buffalo into areas they can't get. At first, one couldn't get disease-free buffalo. I don't know where they originated from. But farming of disease-free buffalo has now become very big business. I think it was a buffalo cow that went for close to 20 million rand. That's nearly $2 million for one buffalo, because it was a disease-free individual and it had breeding potential. So the money that can be made out of farming of disease-free buffalo is far more money than can be made out of farming buffalo just for their meat. And particularly because of the tendency to try and restock areas with animals that no longer occur there. Land use and the return, the financial return on any given piece of land is what makes that land. Let me try and rephrase it. I guess basically what I'm trying to say is that animals and wildlife have a greater return per hectare or per acre on a piece of land than any form of agricultural farming. Obviously there are some crops and there are some things that you can farm, things like jasmine oil or Sutherlandia. Sutherlandia is a plant. I remember my brother grew a couple of crops of Sutherlandia, and he had buyers for it, the pharmaceutical industry, long before he even harvested his crop. And some crops can be quite viable, but generally land use and what you get out of your land these days, wildlife seems to be the thing. And so it takes landowners a lot of money to stock their land with animals, and those animals become worth a lot of money, both photographic and in the hunting community. I'm not going into that side of things, but to put buffalo anywhere, you have to have disease-free buffalo. You can't take buffalo from an area where they carry diseases, and that's what makes it such a lucrative business now. So to some extent they've been domesticated. What's his name? Lindsay Hunt, I think. Guy up north near Palabora who's been farming disease-free buffalo for quite some time now. Who was a professional hunter once upon a time, I believe. He has a very close relationship with his buffalo because they become quite domesticated. They become quite relaxed around humans. But not for working the way water buffalo, Asian buffalo are used in harnessing or plowing the land or pulling carts. African buffalo are a long way away from that. Get rid of this jacket. How are you doing?
Yes.
Pardon? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 taken off the 5th. I'm now down to 4 layers. How many have you got? 2. Shirt and a little fleece and shorts. The difference between a Brit and a South African. Becky's got shorts on and 2 layers. A shirt and a fleece. I've got fleece-lined jeans, and I was still cold this morning. They're not just normal jeans; they got fleece on the inside. Come all the way from New York, and that's why you're not allowed to see my waist down because they're not khakis. But I wimped out this morning. Couldn't imagine coming out with shorts on. I wonder if we're gonna should get signal up here. We've been looped up this end of the world. Where was I? Fresh dung. Huge big pile of fresh dung. There have been some elephants around here. I'm wondering if they're not our elephants because our elephants are back that way. Okay, let's find a flower. There's a crasula, but they haven't. Actually, the flowers are finishing now. Lots of crasulas around here. There's a little red one, so probably a Karachowi. board getting hot in the gearbox. Interesting. So I've been listening to an update on the radio what the guys have been seeing this morning. Other than the lioness with 2 cubs that's just a little bit north of us. I'll show you on the map actually. Nothing really has been found. Nobody's found anything down south. Hang on. Over the radio. But interestingly, way up in the north, in the northern section of Thornybush, where I haven't even been yet because I can't get there, 2 brothers killed an impala, and a leopard came along and tried to steal it from them. Quite interesting. Here we might, because we're going down into a bit of a dip, but in terms of where things are, if we look at the map, and okay, so we are at the moment, we sort of here somewhere. What was he saying? Does not understand what the other lions are when they've come back to Corker. That's what he was saying. In coral. No, I'm sure he's saying in coral. Anyway, it's right up here at the top. Around. How much of the map are you seeing? Becky? Pardon?
You're wide now.
Okay, so this bit down here, this thumb down here, this is where camp is, right down here in the southeast. This map is missing this little corner, but this is the corner where camp is. We are currently going up towards Waxville Pan, so we're up here somewhere. This line here, this road is the northern limit that we can reach, and then that's sort of our signal area is this. Covers my hand. This is basically where my hand is. That is our signal area. The lion and the cub spending a lot of time, almost double our signal range away. This is where they had those two young cubs, where one of the lionesses and the two young cubs is up here on this, just off of this road, pretty much where I was looking for them yesterday morning, because we weren't on the air yet. And it could be that the rest of the pride is somewhere down here. So we are actually heading we are more or less in this area. Although I did get an unlock down here at that dam, but that's because it's lower ground and it's on that northwestern slope. But we might get some signal up here, and I've got good signal there, and I've got good signal here at Waxville Pan, which we will head to shortly. And then maybe some of these lion are around here. But we'll tell. Morning, sir. But where did you come from? Not the kind of a posture you want to see when you're on foot. But he'll turn around and whisk away. Down that way. This is a staring contest. I blinked. I can't, I have to blink. I can't keep my eyes open that long. He blinked. Relaxed a little bit. He's still a bit of a, giving that little bit of a deer in the headlights look. The problem with all the layers is that it's around 9 o'clock it gets warm enough to take the layers. Okay, Mr. Buffalo, we're going to move along now. How about you? You'll have to go that way. I want to go that way. Or you could stay there. I don't mind. He's floating on the pond. What? That's the place to go. You can go there. Yeah. We'll leave you to your own devices. First thing it was nice. Hello, hornbill. You're a bit heavier than you thought, little hornbill. Down to that, yes. There we go. Nice photo of you. Regurgitate. Look this way, please. Yellow-billed hornbill. Maybe this happens at the end of drive. I don't know. Something that happens at the end. But they're also lion trackers. They stayed up there in the north. They were up there, but you just know that they came down here. John, come in. Calling John or John, whoever was on that Ngala dam. Okay, copy. Great. Cool. Just everyone, these Ngalam cones will come heading down Shukani. A lot further south than anticipated. And now they're not on the road anymore. What? Oh, they're on. left the road again. They're lying down somewhere. I could look around this afternoon. Judging by the traffic on this one down. They didn't cut through onto this road. Bloody be. Yeah. Looks like they came across it. Maybe didn't go west off of that. Now I'm hot. find something along the top. Well, not this far. Like north. I think yeah, then they either track or they went west. Didn't come in. There's no sign of them here yet. Another layer. A little bit better. More like 30, 30, 30. 20% chance of finding them. They have manner of directions they could have. Limited by the travel to see if I can pick up on each of them. And the problem was that I didn't carefully walking on the road. If they're walking on the road, they're going to stay. And then I got too far past where they left the road. Ordinarily, I would back rather than walk back to the last place that I saw. I only have one set of tracks. The lion tracks. Fortunately, when there's more than one individual, you can almost guarantee that you're not going to, with one set of tire tracks over all of them. Every time you drive over them, you're obliterating the spot where they went. Trying to guess. This was not good this morning. but rather in an area where they have been for their tracks, so that it makes it impossible to head home now anyway. Come back to those tracks, and that's because they drive that road during the day.